Let's take a look at how to add an authorization to the client record. To begin, expand the Client section and click on Authorizations. Then click Add Authorization. Start by entering a unique description for the authorization, meaning no description can be the same for any client authorization. This makes it easier to locate a particular authorization, particularly when navigating from the search grid. Select your client. After selecting the client, you'll notice that the record number populates. This is pulling from the client code field in the client record. You can always overwrite this if this is not the correct record number to go on the claim. This field also populates to the header of the note form. Select the authorizing payer from the drop-down. This is the entity that approved the authorization. Enter the authorization number if it is required by the respective payer to go out on the claim. Starting day of week and Case Manager are both optional. If nothing is selected here, the system will automatically start weekly unit counts from Sunday. Mark the Approved checkbox when the authorization has in fact been approved. If the authorization is not marked as approved, the system will automatically hold bill any time records associated with the authorization. Our system will support the schedule entries and note entries against an unapproved authorization and prevent any billing from going out until the true authorization is in hand and this checkbox is marked. And then as quickly as this authorization is marked as approved, the hold bill records will get released and flow into the rest of the billing cycle. Enter in the start date and end date for the authorization. Notice the dates automatically pull forward to the Services section of the authorization. The issue date, receipt date, request date, and response date are all optional and for tracking purposes only. Select the Auth Level Validation checkbox only when you need to enforce unit maximums for all services associated with the authorization. This is especially useful for bundled services when multiple services are authorized with a single number of units. This is also helpful when you want to enforce the total number of units across multiple time segments of the same authorized service. We'll look at an example of that shortly. Continue on with the authorization by selecting the authorized service. This is a listing of all services that your agency is contracted to provide with the selected authorizing payer. In this case, Cardinal Innovations will only be authorizing these services for this particular company. Select the funding source. This is pulling from the client record. In the absence of a funding source to select, go back to the client record and add under the Insurance tab. The service location indicates where the service was provided and is the billing location code submitted on the claim. Adjust the start date and end dates if necessary, usually only when there are varying units over different segments of time within the authorization period. For example, when the plan is written in a manner that dictates the number of units that can be provided during school weeks versus non-school weeks, and those are different unit amounts, then the system can ensure compliance within those unit parameters when the service start date and end dates are representative of school and non-school periods. Let me show you an example of what that would look like. In this example, you can see the authorization was approved from November 1st, 2015 through October 31st, 2016. The total number of units for my authorized service of PCS was 1,500. However, My plan indicates that I can only use a certain amount of units per week when school is in session. Therefore, I have broken this single authorization into multiple time segments. The first time segment here represents school weeks, and this is the amount of units I'm allowed to provide during that time period. The next time frame represents a non-school week, and therefore I have additional units I can use per week, and so on. For this authorization, I don't have a need to break out the overall authorization into separate time segments in order to control my units. So I will leave my dates the same. Select the site. This typically should be a match to the authorization request, but ultimately it is the physical location of where services will be rendered. Cost center is optional but important if you want the revenue from the authorized service to be allocated to a cost center other than the client's home cost center. In the absence of a cost center selection here, the system will report the revenue for the service to the client's home cost center, found on the Identification tab of the client record. The DSM-5 pulls from the respective tab of the client record. While this is not a required selection on the authorization, the diagnosis is the required element of the claim. It is good practice to open this drop-down and ensure one is entered. In the event the client is duly diagnosed and receiving services from multiple programs, it will be important to select the diagnosis that supports the service in order for successful payment of claims. The client-specific unit rate is used only when there is a need to override the standard reimbursement rate set for the service and the authorizing payer. In the absence of a rate here, the system pulls from the service record for the authorizing payer. Enforce employee client validations is a checkbox used to enforce a system rule that looks to see if the client is assigned to the employee's roster on the roster tab of the employee profile. If not, then a warning message is thrown indicating the employee-client relationship is not a valid working one. This is most beneficial at the scheduler in order to prevent a bad pairing that would prohibit compliant service delivery. The units are critical for utilization management. There are reporting capabilities to understand authorization utilization, helping you to achieve and manage all authorized potential revenue. Likewise, if schedules, notes, or billing records exceed the authorized unit amount, system notifications are thrown and securities control how these messages are handled. You could effectively stop schedules or notes in their tracks when they will violate the unit maximum and cause exceeded units. This is very core functionality with lots of added value. Enter in units for each time constraint you want to manage. Each parameter operates off of the calendar, meaning the week parameter is Sunday to Saturday, the month is calendar month, and so on. Be sure to save the authorization. If you need to add additional services, click on the Add Service button. This will refresh the service fields for entry of a new service. You can add as many services to the authorization as are required by clicking on the Add Service button and entering as many times needed. An alternate method of service entry is through the use of authorization templates. Authorization templates are a means of pulling multiple services into an authorization all at once. In order to use an authorization template, after clicking Add Authorization, entering your description, and selecting your client, click the Use Template button. From here, you will choose the defined template and entering in your authorization start date and end date. Once hitting Save, all of the authorized services on that template will populate in with the start date and end date provided. This is most beneficial when a bundle of services are authorized with a single number of units. Templates are set up at the Authorization Templates menu. Should you have any questions regarding this video, please submit your inquiry by going to Options, Support, and Contact Support.